Good evening, everyone. This is Senator Simon Sefzik. I hope you're all having a great evening. I am here with Mr. Jason McFadden, and we are going to be talking tonight about some of the difficulties and interesting things in the trucking industry. You know, I think for most of us, myself included, we think of, going to the grocery store and we think of the goods that we're purchasing, the food we're buying, but we don't oftentimes think about how we actually got there and the process for getting all of those items actually onto our shelves. And so Mr. McFadden here is going to shed some light on what that process looks like. So I guess first of all, I just want to start this off. Jason, would you mind just telling the audience sort of what you do for a living and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, and thanks for the invite here to talk about an industry that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about. All they see is trucks going up and down the road, but I was born and raised in southern Idaho, and out of high school, went to work in construction, but in high school I started out driving a grain truck, family farm, and kind of got into trucks. I liked big trucks, drove tractors, mowed a lot of hay, and just liked the industry. So went into construction, and then got my CDL, started driving truck, and met my now wife.
And that's certified driver's license.
Certified
CDL.
driver's license, CDL, yes. And I actually got mine before I was 21 to drive intrastate, so just in the state of Idaho. And met my wife of now 19 years that was from Ferndale, and said one day I want to go home and move to Washington. And I've been here since 2004. And we've raised 3 kids right here in Whatcom County. I live north of Everson, and our kids went to Linden High School and now currently go to Nooksack, and just love the community here in Whatcom County. And in 2004, the only job I've had in Washington, I went to work for Ludke as a dump truck driver. And 2012, moved into the office where I'm currently the safety director and HR manager, and do the hiring and for drivers and the HR side of it. But I'm also very involved in the Washington Trucking Association, on the board with the Safety Management Council. Safety is a huge part of the industry, and so I've been doing that for the last 10 years, and got me to where I'm at today.
Well, thank you for that, Jason. So you work for Ludke Pacific Trucking, which I guess for the audience is one of several trucking companies here in Whatcom County. And I think one of the things that, again, we oftentimes think of Whatcom County, we think of the berries, we think of maybe the refineries, but we don't necessarily think about all of the things that are involved to sometimes ship those goods, both within the state and to other states. The Washington Trucking Association gave me some information. Apparently, here in Washington State, for those of you who don't know, there are 147,000 trucking industry jobs in Washington, which is about 1 out of every 18 jobs in the state here, based off of 2020 data, is in the trucking world. That means that 42,650 trucking companies are located in Washington, which are primarily small, locally owned businesses that are one of the backbones of the small businesses that we enjoy here in Washington State. And so I guess, you sort of already gave us a little bit of your background, Jason, but would you mind just for the viewers that are watching, telling us a little bit about, the trucking industry, some of the things that we may not know or that we may not traditionally think of?
The trucking industry, I think it takes a special person to be a truck driver. It takes a special person, I think, to be in the industry. It's not your normal get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go to work.
You have to like driving, for one, I would imagine.
Gotta like driving, yeah. I mean, hopefully you want to drive about, in the over-the-road part for us. We're very diverse. We work in about 4 or 5 different parts of the trucking industry, but our over-the-road, they drive about 600 miles a day all over the U.S., the lower 48, and then BC and Alberta.
600 miles a day.
Yeah, so you got to like to drive, but what we call the receivers, where we'll pick up a load at a shipper or receiver. The big receivers, the Krogers, the Fred Meyers, the people like that, they all receive their freight at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So that driver, there's no set schedule. It takes a person. They might start at 1 o'clock one morning, but they might start at noon the next day, and there's no set schedule, so it takes a special person that wants to do it, and we've been very lucky uh, in our industry and at our company to find a great group of drivers and to be able to do that.
So I've got to ask Jason. This is just a question I've always wondered. Typically, if you're driving for a long day, are you listening to music? Are you listening to a podcast or an audiobook or the radio, or are you on the phone with what's one of the most common things? Would you say? I got to know.
For me, the best thing that ever happened was Sirius XM.
Okay.
Talk shows in the morning and a little bit of classic rock in the afternoon and ready for bed. There's a lot of drivers now that I think talk on their headsets. We really push our drivers to not be on the phone as a distraction, but I know that it seems like everywhere you go now you see the driver with the headset on talking. But when you're out on the road, Eastern Washington, Nebraska, places like that, it can get awfully boring just sitting in a cab by yourself. So they've came a long ways with Sirius XM and Pandora and our highway trucks, when they shut down for the night, all of our trucks have DirecTV in them now, so they can sit back and watch the Seahawks or the Mariners.
That's the way to do it.
I have a driver who's a Mariners fan that if the Mariners are on, that's his break time. So.
I love it. Well, actually, speaking of, Jason, would you tell us, we were talking a little bit earlier, what's the average age of an employee in your company right now?
I haven't figured it out for a couple of years. We've got a few younger ones, but we're definitely aging out, and I won't say aging out, but it's getting older. I'm going to take a guess somewhere around 52 to 54 currently would be our average age. And I know I've got 4 or 5 drivers that are between that 65 and 70 range.
Okay. So would you mind telling us, I guess that's one of the challenges that, may be facing the industry. What are some of the other challenges that you're noticing in the trucking world?
There's lots of challenges in the trucking world for us. We were talking earlier, like the cost of living is going up. Inflation, etc. We've had to increase our driver wages 12 to 15% just in the last year. Fuel's up, 40% it seems like. I looked at a stat earlier. I think the price of fuel up is just in Washington. There's a $2.48 difference from this day 1 year ago, and it makes it difficult. We have very few of our over-road drivers actually own a house because they're not home, but out of the 4 or 5 that do, 3 of them aren't even in the state of Washington. They're in Kansas and Tennessee, just because of cost of living, and it makes it hard to do that. But for us to get young people to come in, we're federally mandated to be 21 years old to drive over the road, and it makes it difficult to try to find that person right out of school. It's more of a second career than a first career, and we have to find a way to change that.
Yeah. So, I think about, like you mentioned, inflation, 40-year high, gas prices that continue to rise affects probably your industry arguably the most of any industry. And you have people that are think about that. You may work for a trucking company here in Whatcom County, but some of the employees cannot even afford to live in the very county where they work. And not just that they can't afford to live in the county, you're saying they can't even afford to live in the state. They live in other states, almost on the other side of the country, because of our housing costs here in Whatcom County. So one of the conversations that I had, somebody actually asked me this question and wanted me to ask you, Jason, about sort of the way prices may be affecting things. Have you noticed, or would you be able to say that the rising price of gas has an effect on the consumer in the aisle at the grocery store? Has it raised the price of goods, in other words?
Absolutely. There's contract freight and there's what they call spot market freight. Contract freight is if we have a contract to haul for a carrier or for a shipper, a receiver, a customer. We're under contract, it never changes. The spot market is what in the industry we consider a load board. We're going to go someplace and find a load to get us home or get us out. And they have increased and increased and increased. and the price of fuel goes up, the cost per mile goes up. We're going to raise our rates, and I know a lot of people's like, oh, well, they're just raising their rates. Well, the rates are up on the trucking industry. The rates, the cost of fuel is up for the farmer. It's up for the supplier. There's so many middlemen when it comes to going to the grocery store that the rates are up for everyone. For anybody that's bought a gallon of milk, what was the price, 18 months ago compared to now?
Yeah.
Well, that's all on inflation.
Especially if you're like me and you only drink whole milk. I'll plug that right now.
Okay, there you go. The freight, there's a lot of freight increases on that, but there's so many other things that are on top of that in the inflation side that, yes, it's going to increase. I was just talking, two teenage boys still at home. We go through a lot of milk and a lot of groceries, and our $500 every 2-week grocery bill is like $700. It's
right.
It's like you kind of pick and choose where you're going to shop, and so it's definitely passed on. If it wasn't passed on, there wouldn't be a grocery store. Nobody would be in business. You know, nobody can afford to lose money to do it. So it's going to increase. And with the whole inflation, the market's starting to soften some now that there's stuff back on the shelves. The shelves aren't as empty as they used to be, but there's certain things that inflation did when it comes to employee wages, when it comes to health insurance, things like that cost the employer. None of that's ever going backwards.
Right.
Price of fuel might come down, but the wages and the stuff like that, we're never going to see a decrease.
And so, in terms of other expenses as well, I think we've talked a little bit before, like vehicle registration fees. I would assume those contribute to some of the cost of doing business, and they've continued to rise, is my understanding. Could you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, they continue to rise. As everybody knows, for the majority on a car, your license plate just went from what, $10 to $50?
Yep.
And the average cost for us to license a truck, which I just renewed our whole fleet on July 1st, and it was $2,600 a truck to license it on road fees. On top of that, we pay roughly about $300,000 a year in fuel taxes.
$300,000.
$300,000 a year in fuel taxes. And coming into this, I wanted to sit down because I know there's been a lot of discussion in the state of Washington about testing the pay-by-mile.
Yep.
The pay-by-mile. And as a trucking industry person, I would say we don't want to test the pay-by-mile.
Okay.
The state of Oregon doesn't have a fuel tax, and they do a pay-by-mile in the industry. Everybody's like, oh, fuel's cheaper, but the fuel's not that much cheaper. And in Washington, we have a 0.494, 49.5-cent fuel tax on diesel is what our tax is. And when I broke down their pay-by-mile, it comes out to about $1.56 a mile fuel tax.
Really?
In the state of Oregon. And so that's, for us, that's a huge, and it does limit some of our routing. Hey, do we want to drive through Oregon, or do we want to go through Idaho and drop through Montana when we're leaving the state? And so for us, we pay a lot of road fees, a lot of taxes. There's multiple states where we have to have what I guess I would call a special license or a special fuel fee, Kentucky, New Mexico, places like that. So it's not just put plates and tabs on the vehicle once a year. There's a lot involved in that.
So what's the furthest place you go? Where's the furthest place you go out here from, starting in Whatcom County?
Starting in Whatcom County, we're the one thing that I would say that is great about Whatcom County is there's so many different industries. We got the berry industry, we got the fish industry, and
so are you going to Florida? Are you going to
Florida,
Maine?
New York, Maryland?
Okay. Wow.
We'll go up into Alberta, BC. I looked yesterday, and we had a truck in Georgia. We got a customer we haul a lot of horticulture for that puts us in that Atlanta area quite often, and it's amazing how many nice flowers and plants come out of here and end up in Georgia.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, the other thing I wanted to touch on is, we've heard a lot from some people about the potential of using electric trucks for long haul, and I mean, I think instinctually it's sort of a cool idea to revolutionize the trucking world by being able to stick some electric batteries in there and make it work if it's possible. But I've also heard some other people in the industry talk about the difficulties of the added weight potentially to a truck that would decrease the amount of haul you're able to bring anyways. And so could you just touch for those of us that we liked innovation, but we're curious about the workability of sort of the electric trucking model?
Yeah. I think in the electric truck model, it's a great concept. It's a great idea. I know in Washington we've voted recently to be very, very aggressive on that. In my personal opinion, there's no way we're getting there. The local delivery trucks that deliver your package to your house, the drive around Seattle, I think we're very close to being fully electric there and making that possible. The heavy haul, as we call, and the over the road, we're a long, long ways from having a truck that can haul the weight, the longevity. How do we build the infrastructure to charge it? And the numbers that I have seen from a few different makers that have tested the electric truck, and for instance, we're licensed 80,000 pounds on an over the road truck. Have that 80,000, we can haul roughly 45,000 pounds of product.
Wow.
With a battery powered truck, from what I've seen, that 45 comes down to about 37 or 38,000. So we're going to need more trucks to haul the freight,
which means more roads, more road usage.
Yep.
More traffic on the roads, potentially more congestion, and more roads being worn down, partly.
Yeah. And for us, we've been very aggressive on purchasing our latest and greatest trucks, that are all the up-to-date EPA standards. And I was kind of hoping we got 2 new trucks that were supposed to be here in April, but due to supply demand, we're supposed to be here last week, but hopefully this next week, where in our highway trucks, we have what we call an APU, and that kind of powers everything when the driver's on break, to where they have their heat, their AC, TV, microwave. We try to make it a house in there, and we've always relied on a diesel auxiliary power unit, and our 2 new ones are coming battery powered, quieter. And then we kind of stepped out, and we're going to take a gamble and try to keep up, and our sleeper roofs are going to be integrated with a solar panel to power those, rather than burning diesel to do it. And that's kind of our start to try to, we know battery power is coming, or another alternative to diesel. We know that's coming, but we've got to find a way to make it realistic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let the market dictate that. One of the questions we just got, Jason, from John was, how many people are considered part of the trucking industry in Washington, and how is the industry mobilizing, would you say, to create a focused vote? From the data that I have, it looks like there are 147,000 industry jobs in the trucking industry. But I mean, can you touch on, I guess that leads as a segue a little bit into, sort of the mobilization, or maybe, the employees that you have. What's your pitch to somebody that's thinking about a career, or thinking about going into the trucking world? If you're talking to somebody right now who's looking for a job, why would you pitch this job specifically?
I would pitch this job specifically. Everybody always says, "Oh, hey, the wage." There's a lot of drivers now making $80,000-$85,000 a year. For me, the one thing I like about the trucking industry is it's something different every single day. The trucking industry is always going to be here. It's not, we don't have to worry about, hey, building's really slowing down. We're never laid off. And you can support a family on a good wage in the trucking industry. And for me, there's a lot of people like myself that like to have that freedom a little bit. The freedom to, hey, I'm going to do this today, I'm going to do this today. You know, they can kind of plan their day out, but they're not stuck every day of doing the exact same thing. For us, we allow
Plus,
our
I'm
drivers.
sure it's a great way to see the country.
Yeah,
I mean,
see the country, get paid for it, and
get paid to travel.
yep, federal rules. You only work so many hours, and you have to take that 34-hour reset. And we allow our drivers to kind of somewhat pick where they want to take that reset. And I've had a lot of drivers that, hey, I went to a NASCAR race, I went to a football game, and different things. But it's, I know a lot of people have a negative outlook on trucking for some reason. I don't know why, but it is a good, well-paying job that will support a family.
The final thing I want to touch on, because you are the director of safety for Ludke Trucking, can you talk about the importance of safety first, and I don't know what misconceptions there are about the trucking industry in terms of whether it's a safe career or not, but could you just touch on that from your job and your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Safety's got to be your number one goal. For us, it's safety and culture. And I think a lot of it, as an industry, there's a lot of professional drivers, but it's just like anything else. We have a lot of drivers that just go to work every day that are not professional as well. And we can all say we can drive up and down I-5 and watch vehicles cutting people off, cars, trucks, it doesn't matter, aggression. And it seems like it's gotten worse and worse over the last couple of years. I just did a big emphasis with...
See, I can't figure out if it's getting worse and worse or if my road rage is just getting worse and worse, but I hope you're right.
Right. No, I just did a thing with that with Washington State Patrol, and it was, pulling over trucks that were aggressive, but pulling over cars that were also aggressive against trucks. Yeah. And dash cams, different things. We have a very successful safety program, and I'll get phone calls, hey, your driver cut me off, or hey, this or that, and it's like, okay, hey, I'm going to go look at the dash cam, and we can train them. They know that. They know what we expect, and we at Ludke, we travel about 2.5 million miles annually. Yeah, things are going to happen. Incidents are going to happen, and it's just to try to be the safest that we can, and take care of our employees. At the end of the day, our employees are the best asset we have. Everybody talks, oh, we have assets, we have trucks and that. No, our employees are our assets. Without the drivers, without the mechanics, without everybody in the industry, we wouldn't be where we were. We wouldn't have food on the shelves. We wouldn't. Yeah. We've seen that. There's so many moving pieces on that.
Well, I mean, it's a reminder that as long as there are people, there will be roads. And as long as there are people on roads and people buying things, there will always be a need for trucking. I mean, there's always going to be a need to deliver goods for people to purchase. And, that's why it's so important for small businesses and small trucking businesses like Ludke, comparative to other large ones, are so important to preserve. And that's why, I think having a business-friendly environment that allows for small businesses to be able to thrive, a housing market that allows employees to be able to live in the place that they work, and lower fuel prices and inflation rates will make for a more hospitable business environment and allow Whatcom County to prosper and grow more. And, I would assume that you've noticed that people are leaving this state because of sometimes unhospitable business practices in this industry and in other industries that are causing people to exit.
Yeah. For us, each employee that has left my company in the last year and a half has left to move out of state. They haven't, left really to go work someplace else. And for us in the trucking industry, which I'm sure is the same in some other industries as well, is in Washington, we have to find a way to be more business friendly. We're at a very large disadvantage in the trucking industry for what we do compared to other states, just because when we drive over the road, if they're working for us, they're a Washington State employee. It doesn't matter where they live. There's a reason that in Washington, the 3 largest, what we call mega carriers, have left and moved east.
Really?
There's I'll use L&I as an example. Every hour an employee works, it costs us, $3.68 an hour in L&I for a truck driver. I can take that exact same employee and go to South Dakota, and it costs us $1.09. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different things that we could do to become more business friendly, to keep our small businesses here, and our big businesses, and for right now to grow very much in the trucking industry. It's very hard to do it naturally. You're going to have to do it off of acquisition.
Now, the other thing that I think is helpful to touch on, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, Jason, because you said you have a dairy background.
Yep. My grandparents were dairy farmers in southern Idaho.
So, I mean, we've seen here in Whatcom County lots of smaller dairy farms that are getting purchased, or that the owners are selling to larger companies because it's just hard for small businesses right now, and that's in the dairy industry. I'm assuming we've seen similar things in the trucking industry as well.
Yeah, and in the trucking industry, Freight Waves, a magazine that's always doing updates on the trucking industry. I was just doing some reading on it here last week. That when we had that word that I don't like to use, COVID, come into place, and in early 2021, the demand got so large that all of these drivers were quitting their companies, buying their own trucks, becoming owner-operators, and, I mean, freight rates were through the roof. But with that, equipment costs came up, and everything got, more expensive. I was watching an auction the other day here a couple months ago, and they were paying as much for a used truck with 250,000 miles on it than what you could get a brand new one for. Just because they could have a truck today. They didn't have to wait 9 months to get one. It could show up today, so they were paying top dollar. We do a lot of reefer hauling, and a trailer that was $82,000 last year is $110,000 this year. I mean, there's a 25% increase right there just, year over year because of raw materials. But we're starting to see that soften now. We have all these owner-operators, and they were, with the Federal Motor Carriers, FMCSA, they had record number of new 1 to 2 unit companies coming on. But just since May, we have record number of small business and 1 and 2 companies going out of business. But they're going out of business now because they bought their trucks and trailers and their equipment at such a high cost that, they owe $120,000 truck that today's worth $70,000.
Right.
It's just a difficult thing with inflation because now they're trying to soften that, and then all of a sudden fuel spike. What was the average rate on the West Coast this last week? According to EIA, was like 565, and I looked at 328 last year on the same date. So it's there's definitely a market there, and it's hard just because of the ups and downs of we're lucky that where I work, and I know there's a lot of other companies in Whatcom County, but we've been doing it for 76 years, all in the same family. It's still 100% family owned, and I think they've seen the roller coasters, the ups, the downs, and it's just it's going to be a very interesting next 3 or 4 months for sure through the end of the year, and hopefully when we come back into session, we can try to make some changes.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that in a sec. What I was going to say is, to those of you that are watching and just heard a whole bunch of numbers about, the industry, what I want you to just bear in mind is all of these costs that are being talked about by Jason are things that get passed on in some way to the consumer. And so when you hear these numbers, these are not just theoretical things that don't affect you and I. I mean, when we go to the grocery store and it costs $10 for 2 bags of chips when last year it was much cheaper, that's because of policies partly and costs that end up getting passed on to you and I at the grocery store. And so that doesn't mean that things are without hope. So that's why you brought it in perfectly to legislation. What if you had the magic wand in terms of legislative authority? We'll hand it over to you for a sec. In this industry, what would you change in order to make again, price is cheaper for us at the pump or in the aisle, or also for, you and your industry and employees?
Right, I mean, for us, for me, there's a couple things that that I would like to see change, and I know, it's a long shot. Like, we talk about fuel taxes, and we talk about road usage taxes, and we talk about things like that, and it's just my own personal opinion that I can't remember the number of how much money goes into the state of Washington every year in fuel taxes, just from
$1.3 billion.
$1.3 billion.
Yep.
And out of that, how much actually goes to roads and bridges, and not nothing against bicyclists and walkways and stuff like that, but our highways are falling apart. To me, we have to find a way to force it somehow to gain truck parking. Our rest areas are being overran by homeless, and I understand they need a place to go, but I've had a really large focus in the last couple of years of trying to increase women in trucking. And when my drivers say, there's no way, I would rather just pull over on the side of the road if I absolutely have to, I'm not pulling into a rest area because it's not safe. That's sad to see. And, we take those billions of dollars, and I would really like to know how much actually goes into highway. I know we have the transportation plan and all that, but I also know that we make a lot of money right here in Whatcom County off of the fuel that comes out of the refineries over here. And very, very, very little of that actually goes back into Whatcom County.
Yep.
And the same with Skagit. And I would like to see that change. Let's focus more on roads and bridges. I went to Eastern Washington to Wenatchee last weekend and went over Stevens Pass, and that's the worst highway I've been on in years. I mean, it was just so rough pulling a trailer that it's like, how come we haven't fixed that, but we're building 8 miles of bike path in Seattle?
Yep.
And I'd like to see that. And I would like to, to change our whole workman's comp situation. I mean, we spend about $400,000 a year in health insurance and different things. And if there's one minor thing and an employee has health insurance, it still doesn't matter. It goes to L&I. Workman's comp, and a lot of people don't know, but every dollar that goes to that, the employer is paying about $4. Is what it comes back to. And so I'd like to see some changes there and some different things made, and go back to, we're paying the fuel taxes, we're paying the highway use fee taxes. Let's use them on the highways.
Yeah. In other words, let's use our transportation funding for transportation.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I've talked about with some constituents before about, the importance of making sure that the money that gets sent from Whatcom County to Olympia actually gets used on Whatcom County projects. Because, of course it's true that Seattle is a higher source of tax revenue than Whatcom County is alone, because there's way more people there. But what oftentimes isn't the case is, like you mentioned, in the refining industry, the money and the tax revenue that comes from those industries. We saw it this year with the proposed transportation package. The money doesn't necessarily trickle back, even though the money seems to go to Olympia, but that funding isn't used for funding projects in Whatcom County, in Bellingham, and Ferndale. It's used to fund projects in Seattle and Tacoma using our resources. One other question we just got from John. Did the industry lose employees as a result of any mandates, like the vaccine mandate? And have truckers, are they getting fired, or are they choosing retirement, which obviously affects the supply chain issue? And do you think that this is going to continue to be an issue?
Yeah, I do believe that the industry has lost some drivers due to the mandate and that was put in place. For us, it really affected our business because we do cross-border into Canada. And as we know, there's still, the vaccine mandate. So we had some employees that, it's their right not to. We personally did not fire anybody, lay anybody off, let anybody go to do that. Due to that reason, we found ways to, to work with that. But it was very hard for that going across the country because couldn't get into truck stops. Restaurants were closed. We found a lot of that to where we had some drivers that just, this isn't for me anymore. When you can't eat dinner, you can't go here. I mean, they just weren't even open, and, everybody has to eat. You know, the fast food. How many fast food places don't allow a walk up to a window? Well, a semi's not going to fit through the drive-through, and we'd have them, Burger King, McDonald's. Oh, sorry, we can't help you, etc. Every fast food chain. So it did. The mandate definitely affected it on the vaccine mandate side, and I know some businesses that if you didn't get vaccinated, you lost your job. And I know it's a big thing right now in law enforcement too, in different places. It's like, and so yeah, no, it had a large effect on the industry.
Thank you for answering that question. Well, Jason, we were also talking for those of you. Remember, the fair is also coming up. Jason, you are going to be, tell me if I'm wrong, from Monday to Saturday, you're going to be narrating the Grandstand Horse Show.
Yep.
What is that? Is that what it's called?
Yep, the Grandstand Horse Show at the Northwest Washington Fair. It's my favorite time of the year is fair time. Watching all our youth, the future of youth. It's just like the industry. It doesn't matter with our youth. We have to start our youth young and bring them up. And I've been very lucky to have the opportunity to do that this year, and it'll be my first year. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to fair. And I would encourage everybody to come out to the Northwest Washington Fair. I know there's a lot of cool new things happening that if you follow them on social media that's never been here, and it's going to look different than it has in years past. And it's a great community event.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that, and I can't wait to watch you narrate the show. So thank you, everybody who tuned in for watching this live stream. I'm enjoying getting to spotlight some of the different industries that are part of our backyard that we may not necessarily think about. And so thank you for tuning in to listen and hear about some of the hopes and opportunities that our industries have, and also some of the challenges that they face because of our current leadership. Please remember to vote as well on August 2nd and before August 2nd, because it makes a huge difference. So for those of you that haven't turned in your ballots yet, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them, but please make sure to vote. And then I hope I'll see you after August at the Northwest Washington Fair. So everybody take care and have a good evening.